Thank you. Thank you very much to both the program directors, the MEC of Sports, Arts and Culture in Gauteng, Balishope. Indeed, me and her met many years ago at the terrain of student leadership. The Principal and Vice Chancellor of the University of South Africa, Professor Puleng Likapula, the Council of the University, Senate, and the student body, the Chairperson of the Andrew Mlangeni, the Andrew and John Mlangeni family, Professor Mlangeni, our Deputy Minister responsible for youth, women, and people with disabilities. She really whipped me to come here. She said, I can't run away. The representatives of the June and Andrew Mlangeni family, led by Mr. Mlangeni himself. I heard the prof saying he's no longer Mlangeni Jr., he is Mr. Mlangeni. The former ambassador of South Africa to Poland, Ms. Phoebe Potgieter-Gqubule, good afternoon. She always whips us there in the Revolutionary House to do our task. And ladies and gentlemen, protocol observed, I have the honor of presenting the inaugural lecture today. The Premier of the home province of Gauteng, Mr. David Makhura, and who is also the chairperson of the ANC in this province, could not be with us today because he's not well. And he requested me to deliver what he will have delivered. And I must also deliver what I will have delivered. So it is two people speaking today. It's myself and Premier Makhura. Where there are contradictions, it is because it's two people speaking. And in the spirit of Tumamina, I have obliged to his request to deliver on his behalf. Program Director, some of us who are still a bit young, when requested to do this kind of a task, we sometimes really get shocked that can I really come and speak about Ubabu Mlangeni. I felt that I might be too young, but I also said and gave consolation to myself and courage that he himself, Babu Mlangeni, was at some stage young and a roaring young lion. So it is befitting that we speak about him because we have learned lessons from him. And one of the greatest lessons he has left for the people of this country was his ability to speak truth to power, no matter the cost, without fear, without any prejudice, and he was unflinching. He didn't care whether his friend, his revolutionary colleague, his comrade, his brother, or his fellow Robben Island prisoner. If you are wrong, you are wrong. If you are right, you are right. And he will call it out. And it is for this reason that he remains a towering figure in our history. While known to be very humble, is nevertheless part of the galaxy of the 20th century revolutionaries, whose legacy looms large over the horizon of South African history. I chose some of his words, and I quote, "Some of our political leaders have become absolutely corrupt. They are no longer interested in improving the lives of our people. They are busy lining their pockets with the money that is meant to help the poor people. What a disgrace. They have forgotten that many people died for this democracy that we are enjoying today. The percentage of our unemployment youth is very high. Poverty is rampant, and there is no sign of an immediate solution, unclose quote. This was Babu Mlangeni in his own words. It's not me speaking, neither is Premier Makura. But I'd rather the words of Babu Mlangeni, a struggle icon in the true sense of the word. He departed very suddenly just less than a year ago. As we gather in his name today, as an attempt to connect the past with the present, and the present with the future, I think it should concern us all that this statement made by Babu Mlangeni in 2018 resonates with the lived experience of so many South Africans to this day. As a matter of fact, it is of these words, is as if these words were spoken yesterday, or I'm the one who is speaking them now. This week, we learned from the 2021 Statistics South Africa Quarterly Labour Force Survey that the official unemployment rate amongst the youth is 46.3% and 9.3% amongst university graduates. It is also in this week where we're once again confronted with doubt about whether we all believe that South Africa belongs to all those who live in it, due to racist incidents in some of our schools, but also revelations that continues to reverberate in the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. They still linger very high, and they remind us of these words of Babu Mlangeni. These words remain relevant as I speak here. It's as if I'm speaking them. It has become evident that there are some citizens who are still deeply committed to keep practices of colonialism and the false racial superiority apartheid sought to sustain. Notwithstanding all these difficult facts, there is no question that we should not despair. Our commitment to a non-racial society will not be frustrated by those who long for a South Africa modeled on exclusionary systems. If we choose not to approach these weighty matters with illumination and depending understanding, these treacherous conditions may wreck the vehicular means we have inherited from our history to realize some of the strategic goals for which Andrew Mlangeni and his generation lived for, and thereby make us a generation that betrayed the revolution itself. In the name of Babu Mlangeni, we must not only advance a constitutional democracy, but we must implement it in all its respects. The 25th anniversary of the Constitution is an opportunity for us to all engage on how we can deepen the impact of the Constitution in all spheres of society. And of course, in the implementation of the Constitution, there should be no room for lapse of a revolutionary consciousness, selfishness, and integrity. We need to ensure that this society we reconstruct is not only politically inclusive, but equally economically inclusive. Economic inclusivity also goes to the heart of the type of the economy we need to construct amid the global pandemic. Earlier, I had mentioned that our unemployment rate amongst the youth who are graduates stands at below 10%. This inevitably points to a critical fact. Youth who leave the education system at secondary school level are most at risk of being unemployed. Of course, we gather here in the Youth Month and saw the underlying philosophy of the youthful struggles of the 1976 generation is an inner quest for a democratic citizenship, national integration, and the recognition of the legitimacy of the African being should not be lost to us. Inevitably, part of the solution to our youth unemployment problems lies in the education system itself. Our ability to retain students in the system is critical, but even more critical is our ability to identify those who may not have the aptitude to remain up to metric. The second solution is the domain of offering vocational training and creating different pathways for the workplace. Only the combination of the formal and informal education can catapult humanity to greater heights. This is just yet another wise saying by Dr Mlangeni that he left us with. Two things Andrew Mlangeni throughout the course of his life was committed to were integrity and ethics. One thing we must all reconcile ourselves with is that you choose to shine your integrity and ethics. You cannot frustrate and fundraise sympathy when Lady Justice takes the wheel. It has become so common a practice for us to declare that so-and-so is innocent, and the question why he or she is charged selectively. Let us reflect on this conduct. Who are we to proclaim the innocence of people who have, on the face value of it, shined their integrity and their moral ethics? I will come to define the integrity and the ethics later. At the very least, we should give these people the space to prove that integrity and ethics were never shined by their actions. We cannot all be judges. It is only those who have been called to uphold the rule of law. When all this fails, who can proclaim one's innocence or one's guilty on behalf of our courts? In remembering Babu Mlangeni, time has come to heed to his counsel and never be afraid of taking bold steps to ensure that the aspirations of the people are realized. So in the context of this Andrew Mlangeni Memorial Lecture, it is helpful to see the underlying inter-articulation of these deeper historical processes, whose distinctive transformative impact on the political process are only visible over a span of time. Our theme for this memorial lecture, which is integrity and the revolutionary ethics in the year of Charlotte Maxeke. Within the limitations of time available, I propose to unpack these principles of integrity and the revolutionary ethics within the context of the current political landscape in which our country finds itself in. Let me also emphasize the fact that in the African National Congress political calendar, in the year 2021, it is officially designated the year of Charlotte Maxeke, since it's the 150th anniversary of her birth. In Charlotte Maxeke, we had a multifaceted individual who was not only the first African woman to obtain a degree in the sciences, but also a pioneer in that she was a delegate during the formation of the ANC. A fearless leader and a high-end intellectual, she was among the first historical actors in our country to elevate the gender project as a constitutive of human agenda, by not only overcoming the gendered structures within the ANC and outside, but also contributing to the emergent construction of a revolutionary and a contrarian discourse, which will lay the foundation for future generations. Dr Mlangeni and his generation succeeded Mama Maxeke's generation in their revolutionary heritage. They took the torch up until we gained our freedom. Once again, it is an honor to deliver this Andrew Mlangeni Memorial Lecture in the year of Charlotte Maxeke. It is always helpful to unpack a topic of this nature to ensure a minimum level of common understanding, because many people interpret concepts differently for their own objective reality and sometimes subjective realities. I understand the noun integrity in its conventional and denotative sense to mean the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles. It is now commonplace to understand revolution in its literary meaning of a turnaround or evolving or change of political or social condition. And let me clearly state my understanding of ethics as classically defined to be a rational inquiry into or a theory of the standard of right or wrong, good and bad, in the respect of character and conduct, which ought to be accepted by a class of individuals. This definition was put by Mutner in 1996. In 1996. And as you can see, as I illustrate all the three in terms of definition, ethics, morality, and integrity, there is no court involved. It's the revolutionary consciousness of an individual. It's yourself's own inquiry, who decide on your own whether you want to comply with the ethics or the moral integrity that you are expected to uphold. And there is no integrity commission of the ANC or a DC of the ANC at this stage. Neither there is the National Prosecuting Authority, nor the police or the courts of this country. It's yourself, wherever you are, doing whatever business on behalf of the state or on behalf of your business or society, that when I'm acting in this way, does it meet the moral and the ethical standard expected of any human being? It's your own revolutionary inquiry. Sitting alone, thinking, and attending to this task. So, the stage of the Integrity Commission, where Dr Mlangeni was the chairperson, comes at a very tail end. Is when the morality, the ethics, and the integrity has failed. It has lapsed. Then the Integrity Commission comes in to make an inquiry whether this failure of your integrity or lapse of your revolutionary judgment, does it then taint the image of the ANC? Or if you are in the public space or in government, does it taint the image of government or of society? Then the second inquiry becomes by the police whether this failure of morality or of integrity has led to a criminal conduct. Then they investigate and inquire, and they come to a conclusion that indeed this failure of morality or of integrity has led to a criminal conduct. Therefore, this individual must be charged and the NPA must make a determination or a decision. This is at a very late stage of the failure of both integrity and ethics. It's yourself. You must look at your own revolutionary consciousness and say, is it still in line? So I think the departure of stalwarts like that Dr Mlangeni, it robs us of that generation that was the security guard of morality and the ethics, where you are supposed to be called upon as you make this lapse of judgment to say you are now crossing the line out of your ethical and integrity responsibility. Before we can deal with you being taken to DC, to the Integrity Commission, you being charged by the police and all that, this generation was able to engage, and that's why from time to time society will benefit from their well of knowledge to say this is how the moral compass of a country or society, of a revolutionary movement, must be guided and move forward. And that's why we did not have an Integrity Commission previously in the ANC. It was just a council of elders. They were not even formally appointed. But I will know that if I'm called by Dr Mlangeni or I'm called by a senior comrade, then I am in trouble. I have now, it means there is a lapse of revolutionary duty. But today we need it to be formally appointed. There must be a formal committee. Then there must be that committee. It's only then that when these committees have pronounced, it is then that maybe I will be reminded of my revolutionary consciousness. But even when those committees have pronounced, sometimes we're even taken to court to review those kind of consciousness. So the question, I think, maybe for the panel and for the scholars, and I know that this is for society as a whole, is that this ethics and morality, who must now be the guardian? When we now no longer have stalwarts like Dr Mlangeni, and even the other generations, you can see that they are departing gradually. Are we ourselves as a younger generation? Is the revolution safe in our hands? I think that is the necessary question to be asked during the Youth Month to the youth of this country. Is the revolution safe in our hands? I leave this to the younger generation like myself. I may not have an answer, but I hope that the panel will unpack it, but it will also be a debate for the whole Youth Month. Is the revolution safe in our hands as this generation of young revolutionaries in South Africa? Irrespective of political affiliation, all of us, is the revolution safe in our hands? Can the generation of Mandela, of Dr Mlangeni, of Babu Sisulu trust us to take this country forward? And can all South Africans trust us to take this country forward with the same integrity and with the same ethics as espoused by the generation of Dr. Mlangeni? Can we really say ourselves were that active force that will guard this country for future generations? In our case, therefore, a revolutionary ethics will therefore mean the universal standards of right and wrong that an oppressed people adopt in their execution of struggle to change their political experience qualitatively. The political struggle is a complex process that tends to develop its own self-reflective practices at the theoretical level. This, however, still does not detract from the fact that the underlying tenets of a progressive African revolutionary humanization are a trans-historical imperative which may only be forcibly modified by the hand of time, but never hollowed out of content or have its form deformed beyond redemption. I would like to contend that if revolutionary ethics in modern society are at least partial, contingent, or the ability to make a living, meaning disproportionate reign of stomach-level politics, then it makes sense to arm ourselves with the education to be able to be less dependent. This way, we are able to preserve our freedom. We who are living today during the democratic era do not have an excuse not to educate ourselves. In fact, it may well be considered a measure of historical irony that Dr. Mlangeni and his generation furthered their education while incarcerated. His generation went to school, even while imprisoned, preparing themselves for the advent of freedom so that they could measure up to the demands of a modern state system. They appreciated the intrinsic value of education. Ourselves, we have got no excuse not to go to school. Because a generation of Dr. Mlangeni understood that in future they are going to run a complex state. Ourselves here, myself, I hope is the same feeling Comrade Mbali has. When you are in this beast of the state, you realize that this thing is very complex. It does not need bicycle riding skills. This is very serious. It needs a complex array of skills and also revolutionary consciousness and a number of things that you must be able to run this thing. So we have got no excuse of not going to school. On this challenge to further their education, Dr. Mlangeni states as follows: one of the biggest prisons we are afraid of being locked up, though, was the jail of ignorance. We had to demand to have access to education, a fight that was fought over a period of 3 years until it was granted in 1967. Guess who was the first among the inmates to register to study? Some fellow called Andrew Mlangeni. I took a journey of 12 years to gain a BA degree. Despite all odds, our jailers were against us studying, and they found excuses to disturb our progress. At times, it was due to the unavailability of funds. But we never let that deter us. I went to prison without a degree, but I came out with 2 degrees. This was Dr. Mlangeni speaking, it's not me. On the face of this question of education may appear a bit tangential to the topic at hand, but a closer look reveals the profundity of this issue as a form of self-emancipation. The question we need to confront is whether our current crop of political leaders is educationally equipping themselves to avoid the prison of ignorance. Being educated does not only mean the capacity to give effect to effective government to meet the demands of the people, or less dependence on political legacies for personal survival. It also means equipping oneself with the necessary intellectual apparatus to be able to grasp the fundamental questions of the day at a much more deeper level than would have been the case otherwise. Yet, it is also true that the imperative for survival comprises many a good cadre, as they are trapped in a moral corrosive and corruptible political environment, which they cannot challenge without being reduced to beggarly living conditions. Unlike the boldness that comes with the principle and conviction to challenge that which goes against the grain, consciousness takes precedence, which implicates the complicity and acquiescence on the part of all concerned. But an observer of the current South African politics may ask with some warrant as to why are the educated young black South Africans implicated in malpractices or misconduct in the public office, if education makes us less dependent on the political machinery and the mechanizations. To be sure, I'm not sure whether I do have the answer to this moral intricate question. I hope the panel will help us find a solution. I'm now giving this panel a lot of work. They can't say you're a panel and you don't come with solutions. Has the integrity and the revolutionary ethics that drove the political agenda of Dr Mlangeni's generation being recast into the post-apartheid society to reflect the narrow interest of certain white-collar workers and certain sections of us, the political class? To this question, I will already say yes. After all, nationalism in the post-colonial setting has all too often proven a malleable project that could be reinterpreted to suit the temper of the times. This is regrettable, though. In sections of society which the late African-American leader and intellectual W.E.B. Du Bois labeled the talented tenth, suffer from failure of moral imagination at a time when South Africa depends on their skills, knowledge, and vision to revolutionize African experience. How are we to catalyze change that catapults post-apartheid South Africa to qualitatively new heights of social development? Without sounding elitist and disregarding the historical force of the working and the underclasses in societal change, one cannot help noticing the transformative impact of national elites at the decisive level in modern societies. It is invariable the intelligentsia which sets the moral tone of the generation and defines the intellectual agenda of the time. Even the early history of anti-colonial struggles was made legible by the decisive practices of pioneering African intelligentsia, who were drawn into the violent European modernization process, but to their eternal credit, redefined the terms of these imposed conditions of modernity on their own terms. The late South African scholar, Tongela Masilela, employed the concept of the New African Movement to distinguish the generational differences of these emerging Western educated Africans who embrace modern ways to lead the struggle for the dignity of Africans. Such awarenesses of the strategic role, as well as the historical imperative to contribute to the transformation of society and the ability to resist the temptation to betray or abandon this role, is a form of critical historical consciousness that has been voided to some extent in the post-apartheid era. As leadership in an expansive sense, betraying our historical role to give bearing to an enduring values which have inherited from the luminaries who preceded us, amounts to a regression and a betrayal. Having fought the racist system which dehumanized us, we need to be careful not to instinctually reappropriate the terms reference of oppressors in redefining ourselves. Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher, warns us that he who fights with monsters might take care lest he thereby becomes a monster. If you gaze for long into an abyss, the abyss gazes also into you. Close quote. In this regard, and as I conclude, I wish to make a call to all South Africans to re-embrace the capacious notions of a revolutionary African nationalism. by unadulterated by toxicity and extraneous matter. We have to boldly recuperate this genuine revolutionary notion from degenerating into a narrow, parochial, and reactionary form of nationalism, serving as a legitimatizing discourse for the grasping hands of rapacious elites who have abandoned the revolutionary project. As we reclaim the moral high ground of the revolutionary ethics that Mlangeni and his generation bequeathed to us, let all the motive forces of the South African history reassert the legitimacy of their space in the process of reinscribing the African humanism into the historical canvas. Integrity and revolutionary ethics are by definition rooted in the philosophical wholeness of the revolution. If by the latter we still mean wholesale change of the socio-economic makeup of society for even higher plane of existence. Concepts such as revolutionary practice, integrity, and ethics need to be abstract from the theories. Neither should the notion of a truly united, non-racial, and non-sexist and a democratic and a just society rooted in material progress and economic justice, as advanced by constitutionalism. Those of us who remain need to be custodians and practitioners of Dr Mlangeni's legacy, and that during his revolutionary practice, integrity and ethics are not taken for granted, but are asserted boldly and loudly, even to the cost of one's well-being. Outspokenness against the violation of the revolutionary tenets is the price to pay. There is no any other way. As George Orwell says, during times of universal deceit, telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act. There can be no better expression of revolution, of upholding integrity and ethics in the process of societal change than telling the truth. In other words, telling the truth in itself is a revolutionary practice. It is through this revolutionary practice of telling the truth that qualitatively new, lucid, and higher forms of social consciousness are born. Dr Mlangeni was the epitome of this new form of social consciousness, which remain impermeable to deformities, deviancy, and deviant behavior. It was exactly within revolutionary practice in mind when the Brazilian revolutionaries Paulo Freire and Maxeke stated that the new man and the new woman do not appear by accident. The new man and the new woman are born in practice of the revolutionary reconstruction of society. Close quote. Thank you very much.